You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings. Great deal going on. You put down a deposit, you get up to $1,000 in free plays. That simple, that easy. All right, now joined by Jason Scheer. I am currently on assignment in Lake Tahoe. Jason was actually at the game doing his job as he should, as most professional people will. We'll get to that in a moment. But Jason, everybody's talking about Speedy Luke. You messaged me yesterday, and it sounded like Fam would look like he was on a different level yesterday.
Yeah, the thing with him is like there's football speed and there's track speed a lot of times, but for him it's both. Like he had a play where he made a guy miss and then he's just gone. And once you get to the certain level or the second level with his speed, it's over, and Arizona's just going to find ways to use him. I mean, he is clearly one of the more impressive freshmen that Arizona got in this class.
And you just hit the nail on the head. How many times during the Rich Rod or even the Stoops era would we hear about some guy named TJ Johnson or Bug Wright, who is supposed to be this fast next level guy? And sure, he might be a track guy, but it doesn't translate to the field. He couldn't make people miss. They couldn't run away from people. Speedy ain't that guy. Speedy's in a different realm.
Yeah, I mean, he is a football player in the sense where, like you mentioned, those guys, if you raced them, they beat you in a race. But when you got on the football field, they weren't able to make that move that got them in the open field. And yeah, I mean, it was a scrimmage, but we've seen it in other practices. We saw it in high school. We saw it in the All-American game. Once he makes guys miss and he has the ability to do that, it's just really, really difficult to catch up to him.
I'm fascinated to see what they do, because you and I have talked about this a great deal about how many touches do you give Speedy? Does he give, you almost have to keep him on the field. You almost have to keep him on the field. But again, he's a small dude. By Jedd Fisch's own calculation, he's about 5'8", 160. What is the ideal amount of touches for Jason Scheer at this point? That sounded terrible, by the way.
I would say like 10 to 12, probably.
Right.
You're not going to want to give him 30 carries. You still have Wiley. You still have DJ Williams. You still have Jonah Coleman. On the running back depth chart, those guys are probably ahead of Luke. Mm-hmm. But Luke is going to be used in a variety of ways. You're going to see two back sets. You're going to see him at wide receiver. You're going to see him in different ways. And so if you can get him 10 to 12 touches a game as a freshman, I think you're fine.
All right, Jason, we're gonna talk. Keep going on this, but real quickly, and we'll talk more about this. But Gary Lewis says, thanks for all the college football realignment analysis. That's why it's important to follow guys like Scheer, because they're not just saying stuff; they're not putting stuff out there. And again, it's a big thing. Yesterday, as some people might know, was National Radio Day. And the cool thing about being on this platform is that, you're able to talk with a lot of other people in the media, have a lot of fun. You don't have to post 40 pictures of yourself flexing on Twitter in some weird way that only reconfirms people's ideas about you. But again, very privileged to have Jason Scheer on here as well. So let's talk about now the quarterback position. Now, did I jinx, or did I actually help the quarterback position here? Because when I put out there a while back, I said, Noah Fifita is the best quarterback on the team, and you agreed with me at the time, so you don't get totally out of this. But we both agreed that DeLaura would start. DeLaura looks like a different quarterback right now. Is that fair?
Yes. Since you mentioned that, you inspired Jayden DeLaura, and he is clearly the best quarterback on the roster.
Right.
And I think part of that is like Noah Fifita, a lot of it was against the twos. Mm-hmm. And what they've done the past week, especially with DeLaura's absence, is he ran against the ones. And the game's just faster. It's just too fast for him right now. And he's not bad or anything like that. It's just like you could tell, especially last night at the scrimmage, one guy has played college football and one guy hasn't.
And we're 100% in on Noah Fifita, so I don't want people to think that that's a different situation. But looking at just some of the highlights, looking at the receiver, and we're going to keep talking about the receivers throughout the season because it's the strength of the team. DeLaura, Fifita, heck, if McLeod gets in there via injury, Jason, they've got a real margin for error to work with there. And you put this out there on your Wildcat Authority. By the way, where can they go to get all your good stuff?
At Jason Scheer on Twitter, and then wildcatauthority.com I think we're going to be running a deal here for the start of the season.
That's what we like to hear. But between T-Mac, between Cowling, Dorian Singer, you got Jamari in there, Kevin Green, AJ Jones. These are guys at this point that we know there are 4 or 5 of them. We didn't even mention Fam, Speedy Luke, that can all play. And that's going to be a real benefit for this for the quarterback back there.
Yeah, and I mean, like that, you just signified all the talent. You didn't even mention Anthony Simpson.
Right.
And it's not like a fault of yours. Like there's real talent in this room. And Simpson is a guy that has been fantastic. And he was really good at the scrimmage. And then Cowing, T-Mac. You got a guy like Joyner who's probably running with the 2s right now, but he looked fantastic. Like you saw him in practice. He looked great. And there is a lot of talent at the position. If anything, Cowing's absence, and he'll be back on Tuesday, it showed how much talent is in this room because Simpson and Kevin Green, true freshmen, have stepped up. And they've looked great. And Dorian Singer is probably a guy that we don't talk about enough. I mean, he's challenging to be one of the better receivers in the conference. He's that good. And so the talent at that position is as good as I've seen at Arizona in a long time.
You know what's funny? I was thinking about Singer the other day, and I think in a weird way that I even underrated him because I thought he was more of just kind of a solid guy that could get open, that you could depend on. No. I mean, he's all that, but he's a lot more vertically explosive than that.
Yeah, he's one of these receivers. He can do a little bit of everything. And the thing with him is he is explosive and he can go up and get it. And he can be a possession receiver if you need him. He's one of these guys that can do what Arizona needs him to do. And we were talking in the press box last night that we've probably underrated him all camp. And last night was kind of his, don't forget about me moment where he was really, really good at times in that scrimmage. And it's like, he is a starter, and T-Mac and Cowing get the attention, and rightfully so. But Dorian Singer's been right there with him throughout camp.
All right. Now we need to talk about the offensive line. Leif Magnuson's father, big fan of the show. Hello, Quinn. You're watching out there. He wanted to talk about some depth along the O-line. I'm a big fan of Leif, but let's talk about the starting 5 right now, and then talk about where we could possibly get a little bit of depth. What do you think just right now when you look at where you've got Morgan, Fears, Baker, Donovan, and Savanea looking around the conference? Is that an average unit? Where did you go? Where would you go with that?
Yeah, I'd say it's an average offensive line. And remember, if you ask the coaching staff the biggest issue with the offensive line last year, they weren't going to point to the offensive line. They were pointing to the quarterback position and the fact that the guys weren't making the right reads and all that. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the offensive line has looked better with a better quarterback behind center. Like I haven't said to myself this camp, man, the offensive line just isn't very good.
Right.
Depth is a concern. It's a concern with most offensive lines in college, but the starting offensive line should be good enough to win football games.
All right, so let's talk about a little bit of the depth. Let's talk about a guy like a Magnuson. Let's talk about maybe let's talk about a JT Hand. Where exactly do those guys fit in?
Yeah, so I think JT Hand would be considered your 6th offensive lineman. He's going to get plenty of playing time in the rotation, and then you have Leaf and Sam Lange. Those are probably the 2 guys right now. It's probably like an 8-deep rotation. Leaf had a nice camp. I think JT Hand is kind of you can plug and play him. Sam Lange has been solid, and so there's depth. But look, at the end of the day, there's going to be a drop off between starters and backups at any offensive line in the country, no matter how good you are. But I think those 3 guys have emerged as legitimate options for depth, and the coaching staff probably feels pretty comfortable with them moving forward.
All right, Jason, you're the expert here. Gary Lewis said, did U of A get Max Gibbs, O-lineman that left USC yet? What's the deal there?
I have not heard his name mentioned, but I know everyone whenever you see a big offensive lineman enter the portal, everybody wants Arizona to go get him.
Especially when you see like USC or LSU attached to it or something. You're like, I'll take that one. All right. Now we got to talk about the defense, but first, have I told you about the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX, Jason?
Please do, Mike.
Okay, here's the deal. You put down a deposit, you can get up to 1,000 in free plays. Jason and I are back. Jason is professional journalism, so I don't know that he'll go with this. But are we back? We're back in the A on the over 2.5 and the over 3, correct?
Absolutely.
Big time. That's all you got to do. Like I said, you think I'm an idiot? Cool. Jason's not an idiot, though. 21 and up, Arizona only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. They'll get you all taken care of right there, but this is where you want to be, the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. You had a great tweet the other day where it actually reminded me of something that I would say, where basically you said, I'm not sure that Arizona's good, but they definitely don't suck.
Yeah, Yeah.
Which, when you think about it, that's the total compliment that you can give Fisch, this staff, and this roster. Just think where you were 2-3 years ago, and to be able to say that, because under someone last year, Arizona kind of sucked.
When we watched camp last year, it was, and this sounds crappy to say, but whatever, it was brutal to go to because you knew that you were watching a bad team. The quarterbacks weren't good. The offense was bad. Like, you just knew it was a bad football team. I haven't had that feeling once this entire camp. And that's not me saying Arizona's a bowl team or is going to shock the world. I don't know what their record's going to be, but I know that they're a much better football team than they were last year, and they're definitely more entertaining to watch.
All right, let's talk real quick. Back the A Ray, maybe the coolest name on Twitter, coolest name on the Arizona Wildcat Authority boards. Back the A Ray, what does bear down mean to you? I'll let you chew on that one for a moment. Okay, now Steve Luke. All right, we're going to be talking about this for a little. We're going to talk about your kid here in just a little bit here, but let's talk the defensive line. Okay, Deuce Davis. We've been talking about Hunter, or at least I'll blame myself. We've been talking about Hunter Eccles. We've been talking about Keon Bars, Jalen Harris. There's something to Deuce Davis, because we've seen all throughout camp he's made plays, and he looked pretty good last night, Jason.
Yeah, the thing with him is, like, he led the state in sacks. And what happens in recruiting these days, especially with the transfer portal, is a lot of coaches don't want to put in the work to develop a guy. So they see a guy like Russell Davis who weighs 210 pounds, and they just say he's too skinny. Let's look elsewhere. Arizona went and got him. He's gained like 20 pounds since he's been here. He's still too skinny, but he is a legitimate pass rusher. He can't play every down because he's still a little too skinny, but every third down and 5 and beyond, he'll be in on. On blitz packages, he'll be in on. He's going to play a lot more than, I'll admit it. He's going to play a lot more than I thought he would as a freshman.
You know what surprised me, though, a little bit about it is when you start digging into it, though, he probably shouldn't have been this underrated, though, because, again, he comes from an NFL background, obviously. He's got great bloodlines there. He's a great kid. And as you said, I mean, he's got a thin frame, but he also doesn't look like the kid that's also going to be stuck at 210 pounds his entire life. It looks like he'll be able to get into that 240 range. So that might have just been a mistake on a lot of people's part, including coaches, just not looking and realizing what they had there.
Yeah, it was a mistake. And again, it comes down to it's, Alabama, you can get away with it, but there's certain schools, Arizona's level, where they don't want to put in the work because of the transfer portal, because guys are physically ready. But a lot of times when you add a guy, you don't want him to be physically maxed out, even as a football player. And Russell Davis can easily put on the weight. Like you mentioned, comes from a great family. I asked Johnny Nansen about him last night, and the first thing he said was his father's awesome, basically.
Right. Which is what you love to hear, especially when your dad played in the NFL.
Right. And his father's great with the process, training him and all that. And that's exactly what you want to hear. And again, I don't know how much he'll play beyond like third down and blitz packages, but like next year when he's gained that weight, he's a starter waiting to happen.
Okay, so now let's talk Paris Shand, because he's been a great unknown throughout. We've talked about how he's going to be lining up next to Keon Bars. When you look at Paris Shand, a couple things. First of all, he looks the part. He doesn't look like he should be, Parker Zellers, and we love Parker Zellers. That's no offense. But when you watch him move around, he also looks the part. Is he getting close to being able to maybe put this all together?
Yeah, I mean, he had the play that we saw in practice where he deflected it to himself,
right,
and then intercepted it and ran it for what would have been a touchdown. He used to be a basketball player. He didn't play football until late, so it's not a surprise that it's kind of clicking now. But the basketball part is his athleticism. I mean, he is a very athletic interior defensive lineman, and this just feels like the year where it all comes together. I mean, he's a clear starter. No one's challenging him for a spot. It's going to be him and Bars inside, and he's a guy that he put together a nice camp, another great kid, and someone that the coaching staff really likes.
All right, at the linebacker spot, obviously Jerry Roberts is going to start. You had a great article about how, maybe we're taking Jerry Roberts' consistency for granted here a little bit, but I look for a big year out of Jerry Roberts. I would expect him to lead the team in tackles, and if you were to tell me that he was going to be somewhere in that 80 or 90 tackle range, it wouldn't surprise me in the least.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, linebacker is a position on the defense that concerns me, but Jerry's not one of those reasons. Right. I think that Jerry's going to have a fine season. He's solid in coverage, good against the run. I think he's the leader of the group, and they really like him. And again, like sometimes it's a good thing when you never hear the coaching staff really talk about a player,
right?
Because that means that he's just doing what he's supposed to do.
Now, lining up next to him, that's where it gets fascinating because you got a bunch of different options. Malik Reed, a guy, the high 3-star, low 4-star kid out of Chandler, went to Wisconsin. Then you got an Anthony Solomon. You kind of hear Deuce Lane's name mentioned from time to time. Who is that guy that's going to be lining up next to him consistently, not necessarily who starts the season opener?
It's Colby Cage. I mean, for the last week or so, he's overtaken that first spot. It's Colby and Malik Reed, but they really like Colby's athleticism. They like his ability to drop in coverage and the fact that he can play in other areas too. And I don't want to say it's locked up, but if the season started tomorrow, it would be Colby Cage starting next to Jay Roberts.
Is Deuce Lane is he looking at maybe a redshirt year this year? Because again, he's obviously a very talented kid. You don't want to burn a year if he's not going to be playing a ton. What's the ex-4-star kid out of Oaks Christian in California?
Yeah, I just think that he was hurt a little bit by not getting there early. I think you're clearly going to see the younger guys who got there early be ahead of the guys that didn't.
Right.
Speedy Luke is a different kind of animal, so that's
Fan.
different for him. But like you look at like Tyler Martin, for instance, he hasn't been playing very much because they got here later than the other guys. So I don't know if he's going to redshirt, but he's not going to be in the main rotation right now. Maybe he works his way into special teams, but he hasn't been awful. Like you don't look at him and say, oh man, that's just not going to work out. It just happens that there's other guys ahead of him right now.
All right, let's talk the secondary because I am incredibly enthused by the future of this secondary and maybe a little bit of the present too. But we're going to start young and then work our way. And those two corners, when you got Takario Davis and you've got Ephesians Prysock, again, not saying that they're going to be starters this year or that they're going to be big-time difference makers. But Jason, they both have the look of guys that once they hit that starting lineup, they're not leaving.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because whenever you see a 6'4" corner, the first thought is, when is he moving to safety? Like
right. Right.
And these guys aren't safeties.
Right.
They are legitimately good corners. And like you mentioned, they're not going to start this year, but they're going to play. I mean, Takario Davis and Ephesians Prysock are too good to keep off the field the entire season, whether it's special teams, certain packages, whatever. They're both legitimately good. I don't know if one is necessarily better than the other, but they're both starter quality corners here in as soon as, a couple seasons.
You know what's interesting, moving over to the safety spot now, and we'll talk about Christian Roland Wallace here in a second, although he's just kind of old reliable. You know what you're going to get with him. But at the safety spot, Christian Young and Jackson Turner, to me, are kind of in the same boat in that they both look the part. You see a lot of reasons why they should really be good. We just need to see it now.
Yeah, I mean, they what they'll do is they'll show glimpses, and you're
right.
like, oh man, these guys are good. And then 2 plays later, they're getting beat on a deep ball.
Right.
And some of that could have been coverage, some of that could have been coaching. We're going to find out because they're going to play a lot more zone this season than they have in the past, and maybe that's just their strength. They looked really good during camp, but again, this is their make or break year. Like right. you mentioned, you see the potential, you see the athleticism. Now show me how that translates, to production on the football field.
All right. Now, obviously you're looking at a 3 safety look at points, but sometime let's talk about what do you expect then from that 3rd safety spot? Are you looking at a DJ Warnell? Are you looking at Gunnar Maldonado getting in there at times? What are you looking for?
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's going to start there. He was helped a little bit. Isaiah Mays was in there a little bit, but he's been injured. And Jedd Fisch said he doesn't really know when he's coming back just yet. Hasn't really been dressed or participating in practice for a week now, I think. Warnell has been kind of hit or miss. So Maldonado will start at that spot. And then they have, I can't get into detail, but they have other packages. Let's just call it a dime package where they're going to have different looks with multiple DBs. But right now, Gunnar Maldonado would be that 3rd safety.
So looking at this defense this year, and I was talking about this a little bit earlier in a podcast, the one thing that I think is that you look at, I don't need this team defense to be great by any means, but if you could tell me that they will hover somewhere between 6 and 8 statistically through the majority of the defenses, that is a huge movement for Arizona, and it also gives their offense a little bit more margin for error.
You need them to be average. Like if they're average, that's fine.
We embrace mediocrity this year. Is that true?
That's Arizona's new motto. We just want to be average.
Right. Yes. But defensively though, this is because you and I have watched a lot of Arizona football together, or I've trolled you a lot during Arizona football. And the one thing that we've always looked at, especially the last 3 or 4 years, is, man, this defense doesn't look the part. This just doesn't look This again, and I'm not saying that this is going to be Ohio State or anything. Again, I still think they're a 5-win football team, but it just looks different. The players look different out there, at least in that starting unit.
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at guys that just like even a Hunter Eccles, right? Arizona didn't have another pass rusher last season. Or
Right.
Russell Davis would, another guy. Linebacker concerns, but like you mentioned, like the two backup corners, which are Prysock and Tacario Davis, those are starters a couple years ago, probably. Like they're legit. And so it'll take time. But I was talking about it with someone last night. The hit rate on this class, this freshman class,
It's
really, really high. Then usually, like if you get 50%, you're pretty pumped. This class is really good. Like they did a very nice job here.
Don't you have to give that, well, obviously a ton of kudos to the coaching staff, but you know what is remarkable to me about these guys and why I'm not totally surprised is you can tell that every single coach is spending half their time recruiting and evaluating. It's almost like, they talked and said, listen, there's not a lot here. We've got to be able to hit on these people because you're exactly right. Even the 3-star kids that aren't at the front of the class, whether that's a Tacario Davis or, whether it's a Kevin Green or a Jonah, these guys are all going to be playing here. And they're going to be playing sooner than later.
Yeah, and that's how you win at Arizona. And like when Jedd Fisch hired Johnny Nansen, people were like, "Oh, he's never really called plays or whatever." And Jedd Fisch said, "We need to recruit. Like Nansen is one of the better recruiters in the country. He's going to be a coordinator, but if we don't recruit and bring talent to Arizona, we're not winning anyway." And you look at the guys that they brought, and there's a little evaluation in there too. Like it's apparent that Jonah Coleman was under recruited. Like, right. That's obvious. Speedy Luke was probably under recruited. And there's other guys on the roster that have come in, and like Tacario Davis is another one. You just mentioned in like the evaluation and the recruiting, that's how this program's going to turn around. That's it. And that's where they're headed.
And isn't, as far as just usage and whatnot, isn't DeAnthony Thomas at Oregon, isn't that the comparison for Speedy Luke, just off size, durability, and what you should probably be looking for?
Yeah, last night everyone was calling him Trung, which is great. But
yeah,
but I think DeAnthony Thomas, because Thomas didn't get 30 carries a game either.
Right.
And the guy that everyone compared in the program was telling me when they were recruiting him was Demetric Felton at UCLA.
That's fine too.
Yeah, like you would give him 8 carries, 4 passes, a couple jet sweeps, and before you know it, he's got 8 touches for 150 yards. And that's the type of player that they want him to be. And that's the type of player, he should be. He's that good.
All right, let's talk special teams now. Let's talk a little Tyler Loop, a little Kyle Ostendorp. First, everybody knows with Kyle Ostendorp, first team all-conference punter. It's been a long time since Arizona's been able to look at the special teams and say, okay, that's a strength. But between possible kick returning of Jacob Cowling, between Tham Speedy Luke, Kyle Ostendorp, there's going to be a lot of field position changing right there.
Dude, how cool is it? Like, and this just hasn't happened at Arizona, but we were talking about this before as a joke. It like we don't have to worry about special teams sucking. Like, there's a reason why we're not talking that much about special teams because it's good. Like, Ostendorp is good. Luke is good. The coverage team, I guess we could talk about, but like you mentioned, like the special teams is going to be good. Returning wise, I'm not a big fan of Cowling returning anything. I hate it, but I'm not sure he's going to. I mean, Jackson Turner returned every punt last night at the scrimmage. I'm cool with that. Speedy Luke on the kickoff team, I'm cool with that. I wouldn't put Cowling back there at all. But, and that's another way you give Speedy Luke touches. But, yeah, I mean, special teams should be pretty good.
And Tyler Loop Tyler Loop, who we need to remind people last year was 100% on all of his field goals. So again, that's a little bit of that's obviously that's a good thing to have in your repertoire. But when you watch him kick, this is a kid that I think has the capability of really extending that out. Again, we know last year that he was the short yardage guy, but when you watch him in practice, he's routinely booting things from 45 and 50 yards. I feel very comfortable with having Tyler Loop as my kicker.
Yeah, and he gave a really good answer. We asked him what his range is, and he said basically the goal is to always kick field goals 45 yards and shorter because that means the offense is generally doing its job. And he said he could probably extend further than that, but they talk most about 45 and in. And 45 and in is his comfort range. And that doesn't mean he can't hit a 50-yard field goal if need be. But, the goal as an offense is, let's keep it in that area. And he's the guy where, like Mr. Consistent. I mean, 12 for 12 last year. And we asked him what it's going to be like when he misses one, and we felt guilty about it almost. And he's very consistent. It's very routine from him. And he's just a good guy to have back there.
All right, now let's talk about the DraftKings code word PHNX. Here's the deal. You put down the deposit, you get up to $1,000 in free plays. That's simple, that easy. 21 and up, Arizona only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Jason, if you were wagering and you, with the inside information that you have, and you were wagering on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX, what would you put your wager at as far as Arizona's wins this year? Not what Vegas has them, but where would you put it?
I would put your mortgage on 3.5 wins.
Okay.
Fine. Because look, we said, like, we talk about make or break games. San Diego State, the first game of the season, if Arizona wins, that's a big win, because all of a sudden you're not, and it's so Arizona can't go 0-3. We assume the most realistic is 1-2, but if they go 2-1 and out of conference, I kind of feel like all bets are off. Like they're going to make a little bit of a run there.
In San Diego State too, if let me ask you this. I was talking with a couple people and I thought it was an interesting point. Let's say that Arizona beat San Diego State and they beat them by 10 points. All of a sudden, it's a lot easier to start that, to sell that first home game right there. And you're probably, this is a massive first game for Jedd Fisch here.
Yeah. And not only that, like, you can look at your players in the eye now, and it's not BS anymore. It's, look, guys, I told you we could beat good teams.
Right.
And all of a sudden you're like, Mississippi State, North Dakota State at home, we're in good shape. Like, we just beat San Diego State in a sold out brand new stadium. San Diego State's a good team. And so to me, that first game, even if Arizona doesn't win it, it's got to be competitive. And I think it is a very big game for the rest of the season for Jedd Fisch.
All right. I want to make fun of ASU here for a second. You look at the lines, and I know that they have a 5.5 win total, but I feel very comfortable in saying that Arizona, that the real A, is going to finish ahead of ASU in the Pac-12 South this year. I think Arizona has better talent than ASU, and on top of that, I think that they're not going to quit. I think I'd have to worry about that with ASU.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is we have no idea where ASU is going to be at the end of the year, because when the going gets tough there, they could all easily just quit knowing their coach is probably fired. The thing that's weird about ASU is the media has a habit of like making all their quarterbacks seem really good. Like Jaden Daniels wasn't that good, and the media made him out to be awesome. Emory Jones has never been that good, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, they got Emory Jones. Here's my Emory
Jones stat for you. Last year at Florida, and by the way, they weren't sad to see him go. 20 touchdowns, 13 picks. 4 of those touchdowns and 0 of those picks were against Centenary or Sentinel or some school like that. So basically, he's a 500 touchdown interception ratio quarterback in the SEC. Granted, it's the SEC, but he's also playing with better players than he's going to be playing with at ASU.
Yeah, I mean, he's not an accurate quarterback. He throws picks. He hasn't practiced all that well. I know in their scrimmage the other night, he threw a pick and had a horrible throw or two. And it's just, it's a weird, I shouldn't say we all, for some reason, the media wants ASU to be good. Like 6.5 wins to me is wild. I know that out of conference isn't very good, but that's a good amount of wins. And so I don't see it. I think when they start losing a couple, it's all going to kind of slide downhill.
Let me ask you this, and we're going to move on to basketball here in just a moment, but I want to ask you this. Would you rather have a fully healthy Jordan McLeod or Emory Jones as your quarterback?
I'd probably rather have Emory Jones.
You can't go that far?
McLeod's arm strength just isn't there. And I like him. He's a great kid, great attitude and all that. But we've especially seen it in camp. He just doesn't have the arm strength. It depends what kind of, like if they're running an offense based around the run and short passes and all that, McLeod would do fine. I would take him.
All right, let's talk now. Moving over to Arizona basketball. We're both back in the A big time here with the over three wins right there, 2.5. Let's talk some Arizona hoops. Now, I want to talk about some of the people that we're not probably talking nearly about. But first, Kylan Boswell. I've been telling people this from day one. I wouldn't expect much from him this year. This is a rehabilitation, adapting to the college game. Obviously, he's got the injury. What do you expect?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the reason why he reclassified is because when you go to college and you hurt yourself, the school pays for the rehab, the school pays for the surgery and all that. And that was a big reason why you could give him your doctors and things like that. So in an ideal world, he's good for conference play and he plays maybe 10 minutes a game. And you're kind of just setting it up for the next season for him to step into that role. But I think the people expecting him to come in right away and be awesome, it's not a knock on him. It's just kind of unrealistic with the way this roster is and everything.
All right. We like Kenny Abbey a great deal. So, Kenny Abbey, ask Jason about the new uniforms, please. He loves uniform talk. Have you heard anything about uniforms?
Yeah, I've heard a lot about uniforms.
Or what do you? Yeah, what do you want to?
I'll say this. Think traditional, old school, kind of the way the uniforms used to be with a little bit of a different look.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. All right, Kenny. There's your input right there. All right. I want to talk Philip Borovichinen though. So I've seen so Philly B is on campus right here, and you talk about a guy I did not expect him to look the way that he does. Now you might say, what do you mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is he is a well put together kid. Now you look at Henry Wieser. Obviously, a guy that's probably going to play in the NBA, big man out of Estonia, but he's a skinny dude. He's going to take some time to get physically, to where he is. Philly B is a well put together kid. So I don't know that the strength thing is a real concern at this point, Jason.
No, they like him. I mean, you can tell when Tommy Lloyd and the assistants talk about him, they like him. They think he's ready to play now. And there's going to be some growing pains, but we're probably not talking about him. Minutes it's a good and bad position. Tommy Lloyd's going to have his work cut out for him, figuring out the minutes, and usually that stuff kind of straightens itself out. But the people that say like Philly B is only going to play 5 minutes a game, he's going to play more. Like he's going.
Let me ask you this though, because we were going over minutes, and I had a podcast about this earlier. Breaking my only concern with this, and it's not a concern, it's a good thing, is where do the minutes come from though? Because here's the thing. Just looking at the wings, because Kerr's going to play straight point guard, but you got Courtney Ramey. Courtney Ramey's playing 25 to 30 minutes a game. Pelle Larsson's playing 25 to 30 minutes a game. If Cedric Henderson, he's playing 20 minutes a game. Adama Ball, probably playing 15 to 20 minutes a game. There's just not a ton of minutes to go around. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah, it's really tough, and I think we're going to see a bunch of lineups that are smaller because of it, and a bunch of wing heavy lineups. But again, like, it's a good and a bad thing. Like, good for Arizona's talent, but man, at the end of the day, it's going to be hard to keep all these guys happy. Tommy Lloyd does a very good job with that. Did a very good job with that last year, but it's a good problem to have. But it's going to be really interesting to see, and it's way too early to kind of figure it out. But it's going to be way too. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how the minutes shake out, because it's not easy to predict.
I had a couple people tweet at me last live stream asking me who I expect to be the best player on this team. And to me, this isn't difficult. It needs to be Azuolas Tubelis. I know Tommy Lloyd's talked about it, and he's talked privately about Pelle Larsson, and Pelle's very good. My bad, Pelle, again. I thought Pelle sucked. Pelle doesn't suck. I suck. But Azuolas Tubelis needs to be that dude. He's got to be 18 and 9, and there's no reason that he shouldn't be. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. It shouldn't be Kerr. It shouldn't be Pelle. It should be Azuolas, and it should be end of story.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's got to take that next step. And I mean, he's still really good, obviously, but you want to see him become that guy that's going to come out and dominate. He's good enough to do it. And to me, he has to be that player. And it's great if Kerr is the best player and takes that step forward or whatever. But by Zoo taking and being Arizona's best player, it kind of cements the fact that he's taken that, final step in college, and he's ready to be that dude.
Are people maybe looking past Oumar Ballo a little bit this year? Because I think Oumar had some really good moments against fast teams last year, against Houston, against, he obviously had some issues, but he's slimmed down. It looks like he's probably lost 25 pounds, 30 pounds, something like that. I think this year we're going to see exactly what Oumar Ballo is for the rest of his Arizona career, good or bad, mostly good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, he's never going to be like a superstar type of player to me, but, a solid guy, 20 minutes a game or so, gives you rebounds, give you some points inside, plays tough defense. If he can do that, I think Arizona will be just fine with it. He's got to be willing to be more physical. Like I thought in the tournament, it was pretty obvious, and Zoo had the same problem, where when the going gets tough, you need a guy that's going to be right there. And I think that's the next step for Oumar.
I think with Cedric Henderson now, let's talk about him. To me, I'm a little surprised, and I get that the offense is what it is. What it is. A lot of coaches run slower styles. Totally get that, and I get that he's at Campbell. But what am I missing just as far as what I look at him on the court? Because when I've watched the Duke game twice now, where Campbell played Duke, you can catch it on YouTube. He's 6'6". He's very sturdy. He's athletic. He's a willing defender. He can score. He's got some pretty decent passing. This is a guy that I could see playing 25, 30 minutes per game if things go right by, mid-season.
Yeah, I mean, look, Texas Tech does really good with transfers, and that's who Arizona beat out for Henderson.
Right.
And it got close at the end. And he's a guy that he helps you win. He's not going to put up insane numbers, but he's going to go get that rebound. He's going to go defend. You can play him at multiple positions. And it goes back to kind of what we were saying with football. Like sometimes you just don't want to put in the work. But with him, he's a guy where even if he doesn't play 30 minutes a game, it would be a surprise to me if he doesn't impact Arizona in a positive way.
What's Courtney Ramey's upside this season? Texas transfer.
I think a much better scorer than people realize.
I agree.
I think playing for Texas, you're playing for Chris Beard, your offense is obviously very limited. And I think that overall, it wouldn't surprise me. I'm actually expecting him to show that he's a better scorer than we know.
Yes, and defensively as well, I think he's going to be able to take a lot of the pressure off of Kerr right there, because there were games, and even when teams wouldn't fully expose him, but you could tell that like Terrell Brown, when Washington was playing Arizona, they had no chance of beating Arizona, but the plan was, Terrell, when you ever see him right there, when you ever see Kerr on front of you, go right at him. Courtney Ramey's going to be getting those assignments now.
Yeah, Ramey's the best defender on the team. I'm confident in saying that, and he's going to be the guy that, figuring it's a guard, he's going to guard the opposing team's best player pretty much every game.
All right. Now, before we sign off here, got two things, and then we're going to get some predictions. Again, by the way, we have the best listeners. Back the A-Ray. ASU going out like Usman last night. Book it on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. The only thing, Ray, that I'm going to get you on, you forgot code word PHNX. That's the only thing that we need, but back the A-Ray right there. You're the man, and that sock is fantastic. But two things we got right here. FOCO, the #1 sports merchandise place in the entire world, officially licensed. To give you an idea how cool it is, Jason, I was doing this read, and then Brandon Sanders comes on, and he says, wait a second, you're talking about FOCO? And he takes his straw hat off that we've all seen him wear at practice, and he says, this is FOCO right here. And he said, I couldn't recommend. This is where I get all my stuff. If it's good enough for Brandon Sanders, it's good enough for anybody out there. Maybe pound for pound, the best player out there at U of A. And another thing, Four Peaks Brewery right here. Now, Four Peaks Brewery is the official brew of PHNX Sports. Check it out. Go to the website and go to GoPHNX. Got all kinds of good stuff going on there right there. Raffles, some deals. But check out Four Peaks Brewery. Very good beer right there. Can't wait to check it out myself in person at the brewery. Okay, now, Jason, we're not going to actually talk any realignment talk, but I did want to just say something. Back the A-Ray did get me going on something. When it comes to reporting right now, when it comes to what Arizona's going to do, what Arizona's not going to do, you've done a really good job at this, and I've tried to chip in at times saying that a lot of times right now, people are just putting stuff out there because they have an agenda to keep something together. And you can see that based on the reporting, based on the backtrack. What should people be looking for when you're looking for a non-biased report on where Pac-12 stands, where Arizona stands, and everything, besides following Jason Scheer?
I think the one thing that bothers me the most is when a reporter says, I talked to an AD. Because the ADs are, and doesn't name them, because the ADs are all in different spots. Like if I talk to the Oregon State or Washington State AD, they're clearly telling me they want the Pac-12 to stay together, and it will, because they have no other option. And so it's everyone is looking out for themselves. So I would say that, when you have a guy like Canzano, for instance, where you want consistency. And I'm not saying the whole thing isn't fluid, but if I'm telling you that there's a scenario where the Big 12 is all over these schools, and then 20 minutes later I'm saying, but they're not leaving to the Big 12. And then 20 minutes later I'm saying, but you got to keep an eye on it. It's like, dude, come on. Like,
right.
It's
well, my favorite thing is is when you see somebody reporting that there was a $2 billion escalator clause in the Big Ten TV deal, and then they say, "Well, that was to be expected." Well, you never reported it. $2 billion,
not for $2 billion. They don't.
Right. I'm fortunate enough in my position to be able to talk with some people that would know some things, and I was told nobody thought $2 billion, maybe 900 million, maybe 1.1. Nobody saw 2 billion. 2 billion allows you to really take whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, 2 billion basically allows you to go out and offer schools $70 million a year, not just Arizona, like not just Washington, like anybody.
All right, Jason. All right, I know your father. You got things to do. I'm up in Tahoe, being cool, working on the tan, as you can tell.
Yeah.
But first of all, Barrett Hartman, excellent work. Just took U of A over 3 total wins and over 1.5. Code word PHNX. You say bear down, I say back the A. We meet in the middle and we support Arizona. All right, real quick before we sign off, Jason. Again, where can they find you? What's going on?
At Jason Scheer on Twitter, Wildcat Authority, the Wildcat Scoop podcast with my lovely wife Shelby. And I think we're going to have a deal this upcoming week for the start of the season, so check it out.
All right, everybody out there, we had awesome engagement from all of you. Too many to name, but just know that Jason and I appreciate you immensely. I stand by that. I take Jordan McLeod over Emory Jones. I don't care what my boss Saul Bookman says or my friend Jason Scheer. I'm riding with Jordan McLeod on that one. But everybody out there, you have a great Sunday, and we'll be back with you tomorrow. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.